Hi, everyone. Amy Collins here from Bestseller Builders and New Shelves Books. I am very excited to offer this next webinar with you. One, as you know, in a series, I bring to you the people that I know and I like. Annalisa Parent is the brainchild and the powerhouse behind so many of my favorite books. This woman has forgotten more about how to organize, structure, and write a book than I've ever even known. And whenever I've got editorial questions or questions about how to get published or an agent, Annalisa is the one I go to. So she has agreed to sit with us today and teach us a few of the tips and tidbits that really cover how to write, how to focus and get your writing where it needs to be so that an agent or a publisher or anyone of whomever you may be pitching to, so that you can have a better chance of getting their attention and their approval. Annalisa, how are you today?
I'm well, Amy. Thanks. How are you?
Good, good. And where are you calling in from?
I am currently in New Hampshire.
Oh, fantastic. Now, you and I met in Nashville at Digital Book World last year.
Yes.
And you had a book. You are known as the kind of the queen of pantser writing. It's all about writing by the seat of your pants, at least when we met. But you're so much more than that. Tell us a little bit about your business and what it is you do for authors.
Sure. So I help fiction writers to write, publish well, typically traditionally, and then to move on and sell those books and become a true author, one who publishes time and time again. I call that living the author lifestyle.
And you don't just work with fiction authors that write by the seat of their pants. You work with all sorts of authors, correct?
Absolutely. My main focus and my priority is to help them to find the writer they are and to be the best version of that. So for example, last evening I was working with an author and his inner critic was getting in and he said, I just wish I wasn't so matter of fact. And I said, well, if matter of fact weren't part of our writing, then Hemingway wouldn't have had a career. So it's really about taking whatever it is that you come to the table with and maximizing your true potential and your true talent.
All right. All right. Well, that's wonderful. Tell us what's the name of your business or businesses? What's your website?
So writers can find out about me at www.datewiththemuse.com because it's all about making that time for your creative self.
All right. And for those of you who are watching this on a replay, you will see that URL right on the screen. You will see datewiththemuse.com. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see that link right below this video. Just go down to the description and you'll see that link there. Annalisa, thank you so much for being with us today. And why don't you take it from here and explain to people what you're going to teach, and then I'll be there at the end to ask some questions.
Thanks, Amy. So today we're going to talk about the 5 insider secrets to show-stopping novel beginnings. And the reason that this is important is because, as many of you know, when you're traditionally publishing, once you've passed the first hurdle of getting your query letter accepted, the agent is typically going to ask for your first 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 pages, the beginning. And we want to be making a very good impression. Just like when we go out into the world, it's considered good form to be wearing pants. We want our novels to be putting their very best foot forward. So that's why this is important. If you're looking to self-publish, then this is important to you because, well, we start reading at the beginning. And you don't want your reader to put down your novel because it's not compelling. And if they put down your book and don't read it, they're less likely to buy your next book, to pass your book along to their friends and get you out into the world. So that beginning, that first impression is really important. Let's talk about who this is for. This is for people who want to publish a novel. If you're looking to traditionally publish, we're going to talk about the agent today. If you're looking to self-publish, you're looking at this through the framework of keeping your reader engaged so that they'll keep buying your books. So here's what we're going to do in the next 30 to 50 minutes. We're going to talk about how to avoid the mistakes that many authors make that drive agents crazy. We're going to talk about how to make your manuscript the one that the agent stays up all night reading and can't wait to represent. And we're going to talk about how to stand out from all the other manuscripts out there, from writers who are still making those same old mistakes. And we're also going to talk about how to go from the slush pile to show stopping. For those of you who haven't heard of the slush pile before, that's what people in the publishing industry call that pile of rejected books that aren't going to get to see the light of day. So most writers think that publishing is about having a good story. And it is. But it's not only that. If you want to land an agent, you need to think like an agent. And I'm going to help you get into that agent's head today. But first, I want to ask a couple of questions about where you are. Are you overwhelmed by the pressures on these first pages, but unsure how to make them show-stopping good? Are you unsure where the story even starts or the best place for it to start to make the book a page turner? Are you unsure of the mechanics or what makes a great opening? Do you feel like knowing what agents and editors want is an absolute guessing game? Are you unsure of the whole process and not sure what to do next? If this is how you feel, you're not alone. This is how a lot of writers feel. And I've got good news for you. None of this is the real problem. The real problem is that you don't know how to think like an agent. Makes sense. You're not an agent. But once you know how to think like an agent, you'll be able to publish not just once, but over and over again, as many times as you want. You can host your book signings. You can meet your readers, your fans who love your work and can't wait for your next book. And you can get an agent's attention, publish, and live the author lifestyle. Let's talk about who I am. Amy mentioned that I work with pantsers. I wrote a book on it called Storytelling for Pantsers, How to Write and Revise Your Novel Without an Outline. I help people to write, publish, and sell books. I speak all over the world to writers, helping them toward this goal. And I meet with agents and publishers and editors weekly, and I ask them, what's trending now? What are you working on? What are you loving? What aren't you loving? And that allows me to pick up the phone and call these agents and publishers and editors and ask them questions about my clients in real time. Does it work? Yeah, it works. We get books published all over the place. Terrence just got a 3-book deal and Asian rights. And now I'm going to help you. Let's talk about some of those secrets. Secret number 1, agents roll their eyes when you include too much backstory. So let me tell you about one of my clients named Lou. Lou did what a lot of writers do in their first drafts or the first book that they ever write. At the beginning of each chapter, he included the backstory for the character that the chapter was about. So it would sound something like this. Bob was a Secret Service agent. He had always dreamed of being a Secret Service agent since he was a child. And when he was a kid, he played with and created book, right? So we've got all this backstory, and every chapter started that way. Well, here's the secret. It's important to know the backstory, but it's also important to know what the reader needs to know versus what you need to know. So J.K. Rowling, famous author of the Harry Potter series, knows what color underwear Harry Potter was wearing in any given scene. And, you know, when they blew their nose and when they got sick, and she knew everything about all of those characters. But we don't know all of that, we, the readers, because she included only the backstory that was necessary to move the plot forward. So grab your pen, write that down. Only include the backstory that moves the plot forward. I call that beware of the overshare. So know what you need to know and what your reader needs to know. If you don't, then your story gets too bogged down, right? We don't need to know everything about Bob the Secret Service agent and how he became a Secret Service agent and what his favorite game was when he was a kid if we just want to see if he solves the case. So don't bog down your plot with too much backstory, because it starts to sound like and then, and then, and then, and then. And if that sounds boring to you, it is. You don't want to do that for your reader. So you're going to start, where are you going to start? You're going to start at the point of conflict, because remember, if there's no conflict, there's no story. So in Bob's case, right, instead of giving all this backstory about how he became a Secret Service agent, we're going to open the chapter and he's going to have his gun out. He's going to be chasing the bad guy. He's going to be in the library searching for the information that he needs to take the case forward. Whatever it is, but he's going to be doing something. We're going to see some conflict. Remember, the different types of conflict are person versus self, person versus person, and person versus outside force. So that might be a natural force like a hurricane, or a supernatural force like God. Okay, agents roll their eyes when you include too much backstory. Number 2, agents want to pack up and become insurance salesmen when you include a prologue. So if you listen to my podcast, the Writing Gym podcast, you've heard many an agent rail on this. It's sort of one of the no-nos out there that a lot of would-be authors think that they can break, and they can't. I think part of the reason is that, well, let's talk about this. How about if I showed up to our lunch date wearing this outfit here in the middle? You might think that I was a huge fan of the 70s, but you would probably think that I'm just out of it, right? I didn't get the memo that it's no longer 1974. I might look nice in this outfit. She looks great. But people in general don't dress this way anymore. They did in the 70s. So this is an outdated outfit. In the same way, there was a time when a prologue was standard operating procedures. There are genres in which a prologue is more typically standard operating procedure today. But those are the exceptions and not the rule. Look, every single rule out there has exceptions. When you're E.E. Cummings, you can break the rules. When you're a first-time author, just follow them. Secret number 3. Agents huff and puff when you have no hook or use boring first lines. Sorry, I can't read. Agents whisper in back alleys about you when you put too many characters on the stage. So imagine this. You're at a play, and guy number 1 comes on stage and starts with a monologue. Guy number 2 comes on, they start a dialogue. Guy number 3 comes on, guy number 4, guy number 5, guy number 6. You have no idea which guy you're supposed to care about. That's confusing, right? It seems pretty obvious to us when we think about a play and we have that visual. And yet, many times, especially first-time authors, feel like they need to get all their characters out, and you need to know who all my characters are. Now, it is awkward if we don't meet a character until halfway through the novel. But that would be better than putting them all on the stage all at the same time. So don't be tempted to jump into your story too quickly and get everybody out onto the stage. It's okay for us to meet them gradually. And look, this is just part of the human condition. Think about how overwhelming it is to meet 10 people all at once versus meeting one person, right? It's a little easier to start with a conversation and then meet person number 2. So one of the consequences of this is that when you accelerate your exposition, the opening to your book, then the stakes in the rising action diminish. And if you don't have stakes in your rising action, you don't have a page turner. You just have blah, 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 right? It gets into that and then, and then, and then. If your reader doesn't know what's important or who's important, then the book will be put down unread. And if that reader is an agent, that's bad news for your publishing future. All right, let's read slide number 4 for real now. Agents huff and puff when you have no hook. Use boring first lines or paragraphs or chapters. So as I said at the beginning, first impressions matter. How we show up to a job interview, for example. Which guy would you hire? Probably most of us would prefer to hire someone who took the attention to detail to come with the tie tied and the hair brushed and the shirt ironed, right? So first impressions matter in job interviews and they matter in your book presentation, which is sort of like a job interview. If you're looking to be an author as your job, then the outfit that you wear to do that is your first 5, 10, 20 pages. So let's take a look at some of these examples. Now, these are all old examples, right? We don't write like this anymore. It's no longer the 19th century or even the 20th century. But what we can take from these is what a good opening is, and we can extrapolate that and use it in a formula. So, Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. What works about this? Well, it's humorous, it's ironic, and it's also not a truth universally acknowledged, right? And so we're curious, what is the world in which that might be true? It makes us ask a question. That's a good opening. Here's another great opening, one of my absolute favorites of all time, from Tolstoy and Anna Karenina. Happy families are all alike. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. So here we've juxtaposed 2 opposing ideas. We've also got the foreshadowing that we're about to hear a story about an unhappy family. And our inner voyeur is super interested at seeing some of that drama. And if you haven't read this book, it definitely pays off. Last one. It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. Everything about this sentence is normal. Bright, cold day, April, clocks. Those are all things I understand. Oh, 13. I'm curious. So these are really great opening lines from some older novels. I encourage you to take a look at some of the novels in your genre that you're writing in that are more recent and think about this formula. If you've got great first lines that turn into great first books, then that leads to publication, which leads to reader enjoyment, which turns to more readers as they pass on those books to their friends, which creates more publication opportunities. Publishers want to publish again with authors who sell well. And if you're self-publishing, for a lot of the authors that I talk to, they are using the money they generated from book 1 to fund book 2, and book 2 to fund book 3, and so on. So it's always a great idea to work toward those great beginnings. Let's talk about secret number 5. Agents, toss your manuscript in the slush pile when you start the story in the wrong place. I saved this one for last because it's one of the biggest mistakes that I see. And it's something that agents pretty reliably, I'd say about 90% when I ask them what mistakes they see in manuscripts that are coming across their desks, this is one that they point out and rant about quite a lot. It's also one of the hardest ones to fix, and one of the problems that keeps authors up at night. Does my story start here? Does it start there? What would happen if I started it there? This is a really tough question for a lot of authors. So I want to give you a strategy today to think about where your story starts. So let's step out of novel writing for a moment and move over to memoir land. A memoir, by definition, is a slice of life versus an autobiography that starts with, I was born in, and as a baby, and my mom and dad and my grandparents, right? It's going to start with the very beginning, and it will go all the way up to today. That's the scope of my life. Whereas a memoir starts on the day I started college, or on the day that I got my big first job, or the time that that traumatic incident happened in my life. That's a memoir. And so let's step back into novel land. When you're creating a novel, you need to keep that in mind. A novel is a memoir of your character's life. It's only going to tell a certain time period. Now, if you've got a character-driven plot, that's going to seem really obvious, but even in a plot-driven plot, where we're fighting the bad guys or we're solving the mystery, it's only going to be a finite time. Now, that said, remember, secret number 1, you need to know the autobiography of that person's life, but you're only going to tell the memoir. I'm going to say that one more time because if you didn't write it down, you need to. You need to know the autobiography of your character's life, but you're only going to tell the memoir. Here's something that I can tell you is reliable across the board. Beginning problems are usually manuscript problems. What I mean by that is that if there's a problem with the beginning, then there's a global problem with the story. And I told you I was going to help you to get inside an agent's head. And maybe you've been wondering, well, how can an agent judge an entire piece based on 10, 20, 50 pages? Because they understand innately the structure of story, and that if there's a problem with the beginning, there's definitely a problem with the entire manuscript, because somewhere in there, if it didn't start in the right place, there's the right place that it should have started. And in order to find that place, you've got to dump out the whole contents of the novel and start over again, right? It's also a problem that writers have a really difficult time seeing because they're too close to the story. So the answer here is getting the right feedback on your novel. I'm going to tell you what most writers do wrong. Let's suppose that I've got a toothache. And so I go across the street to my neighbor and I say, well, what do you think I should do about this toothache? Now, maybe I'm super lucky and my neighbor happens to be a dentist, but chances are he's not. And so I'm going to be getting advice from someone who's not a tooth expert. Now that sounds really silly when I say it that way because, of course, I hope most of us are not going to go to our neighbors and ask for dental advice. And yet so many writers treat their writing that way. They take their writing to someone who's not a writing expert, and they expect that somehow these people can give them the right feedback. Now, I brush my teeth and I floss, but I'm not a dental expert. And your friends and neighbors and parents and children are readers, maybe even writers, but they're not writing and publishing experts. And that's a huge, huge, huge distinction. The consequences of this are also, I'm going to say it again, huge. Here's what happens. When you get feedback from the wrong source, number one, it's frustrating, right? It might just be like, I like your novel. I didn't like your novel. I liked your characters. I didn't like your characters. That Bob guy's kind of a jerk. None of that is helpful feedback. It's reader feedback. If you want reader feedback, by all means, share your novel with your friends, your neighbors, your parents, your kids, your dog. But you're only going to hear, I liked it, I didn't like it, I like your character, I don't like your character, maybe your character could be a little nicer. Those sound like feedback, but they're really not helpful feedback. And I think that a lot of writers have never had the equivalent of going to a professional dentist, so they don't know how great, well, I don't know, is the dentist great? I don't know. But they don't know how great the feedback can be, how it really can change a novel, a writing experience, a writer's life. To get the kind of feedback that helps you to be the very best writer that you can be, that helps you to maximize your strengths, that helps you to write the very best book that you can. So please, 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 please stop going to your neighbors and expecting them to be dentists. Take your writing to a real professional who can really help you to find the very best writer that you are and get that book out into the world so you can live your author dream. At the beginning of this presentation, I told you I would tell you how to avoid mistakes that many authors make that drive agents crazy, how to make your manuscript the one that agents stays up all night reading and can't wait to represent, how to stand out from all the other manuscripts out there from writers who are still making the same old mistakes, and how to go from the slush pile to show-stopping. We talked about these special secrets that you now know. Agents roll their eyes when you include too much backstory. Agents want to pack up and become insurance salesmen when you include a prologue. Agents whisper in back alleys about you when you put too many characters on stage. Agents huff and puff when you have no hook or use boring first lines or paragraphs. And lastly, agents toss your manuscript in the slush pile when you start the story in the wrong place. Amy's community is a great community. She's an amazing woman who helps writers in powerful ways. And she has permitted me to share this opportunity with you. I've sat down with hundreds of writers at writers' conferences across the world to meet with them on their first 5 pages, to talk about their hook, to talk about if the story is starting in the right place, to talk about whether or not this is truly going to get an agent's attention. And I will tell you this, meeting with these writers at the writers' conferences and then having them go into their pitch has dramatically changed the way that they've pitched, and they've been requested for manuscripts on the spot. This is powerful, powerful, powerful. I'm happy to extend this opportunity to you. You can put yourself right into my calendar through this link, www.datewiththemuse.com/5page, and I'm happy to meet with you on your novel. Until the next time, happy writing.
Oh, Annalisa, that was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, you're so welcome. Sorry.
Unfortunately, I have questions. I'm sorry. You taught a terrific class. You gave me things to think about I've never thought about before, but it spawned more questions. I'm so sorry. Do you have a few minutes to answer them?
Oh my gosh, I absolutely do. Happy to do it, Amy.
All right. So, and forgive me because I am a newbie writer, so some of these may sound very self-evident to you, but when you are fixing the beginning of your book, and you very wisely said, if there's a problem with the start of the book, it may be a problem with the entire book. Mm-hmm. But I'm curious, how much of the book would you suggest that a writer actually have written before they start sending things out to agents or before they start querying?
Oh, excellent question. You should have your book completely finished. And if it's fiction, right? We're talking about fiction today. Completely finished And you should have gone through that thing with a fine-tooth comb at least 5 times and hired a professional copy editor. And the difference with what a copy editor is, some people call it line editing, some people call it proofreading, is someone who's going to fix up all your commas and periods and semicolons and all of that, so that it's really, really beautiful. And I'm so glad that you asked that, Amy, because this is a thing that agents rant about. You know, agents are not going to accept a manuscript on spec. That means it's not finished, it's just a concept. They want a finished concept before they're even going to consider it.
Okay, you know, and it's different if it's your 29th book with the same publisher. But as you said really early in your session, yes, there are exceptions to every rule, but you don't get to break those rules. Not yet.
Not yet.
All right. Okay, so that was great. Thank you. So I need to have the entire thing written and edited, line edited, and proofread. And yes, guys, that's two different things. You know, a line edit is someone who corrects your grammar and your spelling, and a proofreader, it's kind of like using a medium grain sandpaper and then going back with a fine sandpaper. I always find it very helpful to have two different professionals look at the book before I send it out. That's just me. That's how I do it. All right, so my next question is, you were talking a lot about, and I loved this concept of taking your manuscript and moving on to the next one and the next one and the first and the second. How long, in your opinion, should you wait if you start pitching your first novel and you're getting some good feedback, but you're not getting any love? You know, let's say you don't get an offer. How long or how many pitches, in your experience, should you pitch and that before giving up or before moving on to your next manuscript?
Great question. I always say 100 pitches. So if you've done 100 pitches and gotten 100 rejection, it's not time for that book, or it's the wrong book, or the book's not right yet. So 100 pitches is a pretty safe answer to that question.
I have a number of author friends who constantly work on their first chapter, their first 10 pages, their first 20 pages, because that's the one that grabs the agent. That's the one that'll get the publisher's attention. And they're rewriting. Do you work with authors on just their query packets, or do you work with them on their whole manuscript? I mean, do you work with authors who just need help putting queries together, or do you work with them on the whole project?
Great question. So I'm working with them on the whole project. So I say from idea to sold. So we're really starting with, many times it's, let's write the novel, right? I've got this great idea. I have no idea how to do this. I don't know where to start. And this is where we're really helping writers to become their best writer, to gain confidence that's based on, it's true confidence. It's based on what they do well as a writer. And from there, we move into the revision phase. I read all of the novels that I work on at least twice, sometimes several times. I'm intimately familiar with that novel, so that when I'm sitting down to lunch with an agent and they say, you know, I'm just looking for that next sci-fi that features pigs, I can say, oh, I got the thing for you, right? I know it intimately. They can ask me any question and talk about it. So yes, once we're finished with that revision, we then move into the querying process. I'm making introductions to agents. At that point, we're asking agents. We often get a really great marketing strategy as far as how to position that book for publication in the marketplace. And we move through publication. Oftentimes, we're working on second books, and we also do writing retreats together.
All right. So if somebody has been querying and sending out pitches and hasn't hit the 100 mark yet, but hasn't heard anything back and has gotten no offers or has just gotten rejection, if the book already exists, if they've taken it through these steps, and you're not going from idea to publishing, but the book actually exists, you'll still work with them, but you work with them on the entire project. Do I have that right?
Exactly.
Good. All right. Guys, datewiththemuse.com/5page. datewiththemuse.com/5page. Go there. Take a look at Annalisa's website. Her book, I've read it myself. It's so helpful. Her wisdom, Anna and Annalisa and I, again, we've known each other for a little over a year now. She has taught me so much. And man, I strongly recommend you go to datewiththemuse.com, especially datewiththemuse.com/5-page. Download the very generous, thank you, Annalisa, the very generous content that she's got for you there. And feel free to watch this webinar again. This class will be up both as a replay on my website and on YouTube. I'm not taking it down. I want you guys to be able to come back and to benefit from her experience and from her wisdom. Annalisa, is there anything you'd like to leave us with?
Just thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Guys, we'll see you next week at the next webinar, and I look forward to helping you become a bestseller.